don't think it.
Nie.
I don't think
No.
it would have actually, because still what you see.
Dzięki.
How to be efficient, how to use a so-called technique. I don't know that
Hello, nice to meet you, Angela. Very easy to and short. Angela. I have to go back to the room to take my
you don't, which means that the system is going to remind you things. If you have at the end,
Yes, it was good. I tried also. Yeah, because the next time I volunteered in the office. It's true that there's a problem with that. We never tried it to work one and start to no, we don't. But I would like to propose it. Yeah, because people don't want to. That's why we explained how to find the right distance and to trim also, because we have volume. So if you prefer, to keep farther, you increase the volume. If you prefer to keep
Hello, we will start in 4 minutes. This is a reminder, if you don't take this magical potion here, which is called coffee, or you don't have something to drink like water, now is the time to go and take one. Because after 4 minutes, we are starting. Also, I was asking our workshop leader, Andrei, if he's hungry. He said no. So please, people who are way back there, please move a little bit up front. There is no danger for you.
Sure.
I repeat, there is no danger for you. So please move a little bit up front. Because Andrei is not going to use microphone, and you might not hear what he wants to say.
When I read the speakers from the worldwide organization for personal training. Yes, the trainer there, it's very hard to get to work for them because there is a big solution, so they always have to do it. So you cannot get a job for them. And then I read about and then I was like both of them this is actually from the speech, and this also they are very interesting. So I don't know which one I will. No, this one. No, anytime they check it, they find something different. Oh, here. Peter Zimmer.
Please take a seat, we'll start after half a minute.
My name is in Switzerland. We are Robert. His communication is a lot of
Perfect. According to my watch, it's 15:15. This workshop is about influence, how we can influence people. According to my experience so far, I didn't manage to influence you to sit up front. So hopefully, I will be able to do it after the workshop. So, Andrei, not big expectation at all from you.
No pressure.
I was asking Andrei what is his favorite fairy tale, because you know that all of our conference is about fairy tales, and he said that his favorite fairy tale is Snow Queen. I guess the Snow Queen is tough and can influence people to do whatever they want. And maybe that's one trait that Andrei is sharing with this fairy tale character. With that, please help me in welcoming with big applauses our workshop leader, Andrei Popescu.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Andrei.
Welcome. Come sit down. There's a few empty seats over here if anyone wants to have them. Otherwise, the people here would feel really lonely. And you really don't want them to feel lonely, do you? Now, I'm gonna stand and but stand down. That's an army thing, isn't it? I'm gonna stand down and we're going to have a chat today about influencing. And the way I'm going to start is by asking, when's the last time, if ever, you've seen a guy like this? When was it, Michal?
It was, I think, 1 or 2 months ago, and we have one guy on our Toastmasters meeting, and he was the illusionist.
There we go. Well, even if we haven't seen one live, I'm sure we've seen movies, TV shows. Well, about 100 years ago, there was this illusionist, magician, who was doing this wonderful novelty show where he was hypnotizing people. So he was a stage hypnotist. And he was amazing. People would queue up to see him for days. And then one night, he started his show and something was happening. His mojo was off or something. He couldn't get his people, he would bring people out from the audience and he would hypnotize them and he would get them to do different things, like, you know, quack like ducks or howl like wolves or whatever, and make them kind of stand on their head and all sorts of things. And this evening, nothing was working. He got one person up in front, could not get him to fall under, had to send him back, had another person come up in front, same story. He realized he was on borrowed time. He realized he only had one more chance. And so he asked one final person from the audience to come up in front, and while he was gently guiding the person to the center, inconspicuously whispered into his ear, "If you pretend like you're hypnotized, I'll give you $100. The guy nodded, brought him up in front, and it was the best Of course. It was the best illusion number he had ever done. I mean, the guy was so credible. The guy sold the whole duck and dog and whatever routine. He was unbelievable. And then as his number was coming to a close, he looked at his audience and said, "Let me show you what an amazing hypnotist I am. I'm going to put a thought into his head. I'm going to plant a seed into his head. And when he wakes up, he's going to believe something so strongly. Are you ready? When he wakes up, he's going to believe that I promised him $100. And of course the guy instantly came up and started shouting, "Hey, he told me that he would give me $100 if I play." Of course nobody believed him. That's influencing or not? What do you think?
Manipulation.
Manipulation.
Why?
Because it's for your own benefit. So
Yeah.
if you're affecting other people for their benefit, it's influencing. If you're affecting for your benefit, it's manipulation.
Yeah. You know, I want to see as many of you as possible. That's why I'm not a huge fan of this, but I'll do my best. Some people made the great analogy of having a surgeon's knife. With a surgeon's knife, we can do some good, or we can do a lot of damage. A surgeon who's really skilled can perform an operation on a person and can save that person's life. But someone else with less precision can do a lot of damage, or sometimes even permanent damage. Same thing applies to principles that we will be discussing in the next half hour. Some people can say they can be used to manipulate, but it's just like a knife. It's all about the intention that we use them with. It's not the principles. It's like saying we should ban all hammers in this world because you can hit the person in the head with a hammer. Yes, you can, but you can also repair something or build a house with a hammer. It's all about the intention. So in a few minutes, we will be talking about the heritage of a gentleman that some of you might have heard of, more or less. What comes to mind when you think about Dale Carnegie?
The books.
The books?
The organization.
Yeah. What else? I heard some more voices.
The organization.
The company, yes? I like that. That is one of the things he said, yes. There's... Sorry, what?
Elevator speech.
He did pioneer that, yes. Right now we call it the credibility statement, but it is an elevator speech, yes. Now there's two things which people know about Dale Carnegie. Number one is valuable for those of us who are in the training business, and that's the fact that he invented the training business. In 1912, when he was very young,
24.
he started, yes, when he was 24, he actually started delivering trainings. At the YMCA in New York, in uptown Manhattan, he started doing things that people had not seen before. So having people over for a few hours a night, doing interactive presentations, that was unheard of. Until then, anyone who wanted to learn something only had school, university, college to go to. Well, Dale Carnegie changed that, and for 103 years, the company that he founded has been delivering trainings continuously. And the second thing, besides him being the world's first trainer, is the company that he built and the books that he wrote. Initially, the books were intended only for his participants, people who attended his trainings. And for a very simple reason. He needed bibliography, he needed reading materials for his participants, and he would talk to people in his trainings about influencing, communicating, leadership. And there was almost nothing written on that topic at the time, even in the biggest libraries. And so what he said, well, if there is no book about that, I will write one. And in 1937, out came a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And we will be taking a little chunk of that. One of the best books to this date, one of the books which many people, I think one of the latest that we're most proud of is a gentleman by the name of Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett still believes that the Dale Carnegie principles are one of the things that are the foundation of what he has achieved. Now, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a book about communicating and influencing. because, well, it's in the title. But still, the thing is that because it's in the title, one thing it has done, it has raised expectations. So ever since 1936, people have been reading the book expecting to be blown away and to be master influencers by the end of the book, which of course never happens. And so lots of critics actually came up, and Dale Carnegie received a torrent of critics ever since he wrote the book, people who said, well, these are principles that are absolute common sense. And his reply to these critics was a very simple one. Common sense again. He said, common sense they might be, but common sense is not common practice. And so these principles, which are very, very easy to understand, they're, by the way, most of us might actually use these principles as advice to others, because usually it's so much easier to tell them to others. I do especially, because they say that if you know how to do something, you do. If you don't, you train others. I specialize in giving these as advice, not always applying them myself. But these principles, they are common sense. But the point is not in knowing, understanding them. The point is all about using them in our daily behaviors, using them in our daily interactions. Now, I'm going to briefly go through them, and then we're going to have a few conversations about these principles. And just as a context, How Doing Friends and Influence People presents or introduces the audience to 30, we call them human relations principles. Principles which, if applied constantly, will allow us to improve our human relations. Now, we're going to take one chunk of those 30 principles. That's why you will see them numbered from 10. It's not a spelling mistake. It starts with principle number 10, and it's all about influencing. The first 9 that have to do with building the relationship, because Dale Carnegie said, you cannot influence a person that you don't have a relationship with. You cannot, whatever you do, you cannot go to someone you've just met and try to influence them. So the first thing that he recommends is try to build a relationship. And then once there is a foundational relationship with that person, then we can move on and talk about influencing. And then the final 9 principles, so it's 9 about building relationships, 12 about influencing, and then the final 9 is about being a leader in times of trouble. What happens when people make mistakes? What happens when, as a leader, we need to correct people's trajectories? But we'll be talking about these 12 principles, and they do begin with a number 10. And the funny thing with number 10 is it's probably one of the weirdest. Number 10 says, if you want to get the best out of an argument, you should avoid it. Now, I don't know how many of you have been in a situation where it felt like the pressure was growing. It was growing just like a pressure cooker. And still, it was like an accident. You couldn't look away. People would continue to pour petrol over fire. People would continue to bring arguments to that discussion. And it went to being a full-blown fight. What it says is, a person who wants to influence will first and foremost pick his timing. Or pick your battles, as the Americans say. So if we try to influence someone when there is even the slightest iota, even the slightest feeling of tension, then chances of influencing that person are very, very small. So the first recommendation is try to avoid, because usually a conflict is 90% emotion and very little actual reasoning, let's say. And so avoid, and by that I mean find a better time. And then the second one, which will actually go slightly deeper, it says about, if you want to influence someone, never say that what they just said is wrong. Now, one of the cool things is that some people, by reading these principles, can say, oh, so that means you have to agree to what people say. Obviously not. Being an influencer means, first of all, having the respect for the opinion, not necessarily agreeing with it. And in a few minutes, we will see a way on doing something that's called how to disagree in an agreeable manner. How to disagree agreeably. How to tell someone you're wrong, but in a way that doesn't cut down the barriers of communication. But what happens if we're wrong? And his recommendation was, if we're wrong, we need to admit it quickly and emphatically. I love this word, emphatically. It means with all your might. So if, for example, up to a point I was absolutely 100% adamant that some things were in a certain way, the moment I realized I'm wrong or I was missing a piece of the puzzle, I don't want to say it with just, half the energy, like a newspaper, which after printing a scandalous story, when they realized that they were wrong, they printed the scandalous story on the first page, and then on the 15th page, with small letters, they print the retraction. Yeah? So the idea is to do it emphatically. When we're wrong, admitting it quickly and emphatically. It's always important to begin in a friendly way. Even when we know, so we want to influence, we know we're going to discuss in a few minutes or hours or tomorrow, we're going to have a talk with someone who sees things, we know he sees things differently than we do. And our goal is to influence them to maybe win his cooperation. If we begin by talking about the things that are different, if we begin by talking about the things that set us apart, then chances of ending that conversation on a positive note are very small. So the recommendation is always begin in a friendly way. And that also goes with the next one, which says getting the other person to say yes at the beginning of the conversation, which means having having one or two topics that I know we share, having viewpoints that I know we have in common, and begin by talking about those rather than by talking about what we don't agree on. Usually people say, hey, we need to be efficient. So if we're efficient, let's talk about the differences. Unfortunately, that will only lead to disaster in terms of influencing the person. And one final thing, some people say, get the other person to sell himself. Well, Dale Carnegie said, let the other person to do a great deal of the talking. That's a very clever thing. If we want to influence the person, it doesn't mean we have to talk a lot. But ask the right questions so that somehow or another he reaches a certain point or a certain idea. So the 15th one is let the other person do a great deal of the talking rather than us being the force in that conversation. We're halfway. We got 6 more. 16 says let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. If Dale Carnegie had written this today, not in 1937, he probably would have said be a coach, because that's what coaches do. They ask questions and they allow the other person to feel that the idea is his or hers. Dale Carnegie once said, people support a world that they help create. So if we bring the other person, if we force a certain point of view on them, then the chances of influencing them are very small. Number 17 is actually one of the best ones for salespeople. It says, try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. There's this funny story, which I always enjoy sharing. It's about a young woman who used to travel, at one point was traveling a lot she was flying a lot. And her only comfort during her flights was having a favorite brand of biscuits that she would enjoy pre-flight, so as she was waiting for the flight to leave. And then one day, a gentleman who was sitting in front of her and the box of biscuits in front began taking from the box of chocolates, or biscuits, and she was very upset. And then she tried to make it very clear that it's her box of biscuits by pulling it closer to her. And the gentleman began doing the same thing. And they began, well, not fighting, but having this kind of blind it was crazy, eye contact-less battle. And eventually she ate the last biscuit, took her luggage, went on the plane, and then as she put her luggage in the overhead compartment, her own box of biscuits actually came tumbling out of her bag. So she realized that although she had been absolutely certain that that jerk had been eating her biscuits, it was the other way around. And so sometimes we are so stuck with our own point of view that it is difficult. Dale Carnegie doesn't say do it, but it says try honestly. I love that about it. It gives us the benefit of the doubt. It gives us the idea that we're human. At least make the honest effort to see things from the other person's point of view. It's always important to be sympathetic. Now, being sympathetic, again, doesn't mean agreeing. The other person sees things in the opposite way. But if we think, okay, maybe I was in his shoes some time ago, maybe I wasn't. But what would I be doing if I were him? This, to me, honestly, I know it's a crazy thing. We consider Bucharest, the city where I'm from, as one of the worst traffic cities in Europe. I'm sure they're worse, but at least ours is really bad. And traffic for me is one of the best places where I try to apply these principles. Maybe not the best idea, but still. And sometimes I see myself being so pissed off at somebody who cuts me off or does things, and then maybe 10 minutes later, I find myself in that exact same situation as he was, and I do the exact same thing. But of course, I forget that. Because I'm me. I have the right to do it. He doesn't. The 19th principle says, every person has a noble motive. And by appealing to the nobler motive, we can make that connection and influence that person. By the way, I don't know how many of you reuse your towels in the hotel room. And how many of you reuse the towels in the hotel room because there is a note which says that in order to protect the environment, please help us by reusing it. Imagine what would happen if you had a note in your hotel bathroom saying, dear customer, our hotel is trying to bring down the costs. So by bringing down the costs, we need to pay less on the laundry bill, so please reuse your towels, damn it. Because at home, you don't use towel just one day, do you? So by saying the things as they really are, they wouldn't be appealing to the nobler motives. One thing that some people do is dramatize their ideas. That's the 20th principle. Dramatizing ideas means bringing life. That's something that we Toastmasters do a lot. Bringing life to the things that we say. There was a guy I knew. He used to work for a company that's competitive for Procter & Gamble, and he was selling adult diapers. And he had a meeting with one of his potential customers, and he was talking about this brand new technology where there was a certain substance in those diapers that will turn liquid into gel very quickly. And the way he did it was, as he was talking, and he had a glass of water, he, without making too much of it, just inconspicuously just put a few drops of that substance into the glass of water, and then just stirred it. Again, not worrying it, not looking at it, but while talking. And after about a minute, he took his glass and threw it towards his partner, his client, who of course went, probably at that moment, thought, what the hell is this guy doing? Well, not one drop of water came out of the glass, because that substance had already turned that water into gel. And that was his way of showing his idea in a dramatic way. Of course, he could have done it differently. He could have said, look, we have this research which says that our substance will turn water into gel in 13.3 seconds. And this is the formula that does that. By dramatizing the idea, made that point come home so much better. And final point, or final recommendation, whenever we want to influence people, it's always good to throw down a challenge. People react to challenges. One of my friends says she likes doing crazy things just for the fun of it. She's Polish and she's learning Czech. Yeah, she's Polish and she's learning Czech. Why? Because she likes to be challenged. And I don't think she's the only one. One of the reasons we're here is because we love the challenges. Yes, please.
Yeah, but this number 21, does it apply universally across culture? Because some cultures are more challenge-prone than others, and some are more kind of...
I would say that it does not apply universally to all people. I mean, even in one culture, you might have people who do not respond positively to challenges. But let's not forget one thing which I touched on quickly. In order to influence a person, we need to have a relationship with that person. Mm-hmm. We need to know something about that person. It's not a person I've just met, and then I just throw a challenge and see if it works or not. But we know the person, we have at least some idea about what he reacts and does not react to, and so that allows us to use the right thing. Now, these are the 12 principles. I have them, smaller font, but all in one page. Can anyone in the back see what's there? No, okay. Well, I will not read them one more time, but what I will do is, I'm going to ask you, in a few seconds, I'm going to invite you to just group up with the people who are in your immediate vicinity. So kind of, that means some of you might have, not right now, but some of you might have to turn around because there are people behind you. And what we're going to do is, in these small groups, maybe 5, 6, 7 people, I'm going to ask you to just take one more look at these principles and pick 3 which you have had a chance to either see being used or not used when they should have been used. So kind of the right way and the wrong way. So pick 3 of them that you have had experience with either yourself or in your club, at the company where you work with, So we're going to be making small groups. We're going to pick 3 of these. We'll have a small conversation, share in our group what we've seen happen or not happen, and then we'll get back in a few minutes and we'll share some conclusions. Before we do that, anyone has a question about what needs to happen in the next few minutes? Wonderful. So thank you. Oh, you do have Frank,
What is
please.
the challenge?
Sorry?
What is the challenge?
You'll see when we try to stand up. So let's please all stand up. Turn to the people around you. Just form groups of 3, 4, 5, whatever is most convenient. If you want to sit down, wonderful. If you don't,
Jess,